Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily, a podcast helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, and I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI in education is to work with it openly. So today's episode comes from a story published June 1st in the New York Times Magazine. Reporter Linda Kinsler spent a year on this piece, visiting multiple campuses, talking to more than 60 students, faculty, and administrators. This is a serious piece of reporting on a real institutional experiment, and the findings are complicated enough to deserve that kind of attention. So here's what happened. In January 2025, the California State University system, the largest four-year public university system in the country, 22 campuses in all, more than 500,000 students and faculty, signed a $17 million deal with OpenAI. The goal, announced at a press conference by the chancellor, was to become the nation's first AI-powered university system. Every student, every faculty member would get an enterprise license for ChatGPT. A year later, faculty organized against the contract. Nearly 4,000 people signed a petition to kill it. Roughly half the licenses went unused. And CSU renewed the contract anyway, from $13 million more over 3 years. So that sequence, how all of that played out, is what we want to talk about in today's episode. So let's start with who made the decision and how they described it at the time. The president of San Jose State, one of the 22 CSU campuses, refers to herself as the CEO of the university. She told a reporter that she and the Silicon Valley tech leaders are all trying to do the same thing: mobilize their workforce to adapt, create, innovate, and be more productive. She used her AI avatar to send a welcome message to incoming students, and she's working on a hologram. In short, she's all in on AI. CSU's student population is majority first-generation college students, many of them immigrants or children of immigrants, many working while enrolled, many commuting. The argument that these students deserve access to advanced technology and that an enterprise agreement protects them from having to use a free version that would train on their data, that argument does carry real weight. I think it's defensible on that narrow point. But what the CEO framing leaves out is that an enterprise license is really an administrative decision. Knowing what a tool is actually for in a classroom with specific students towards specific learning goals is actually a pedagogical decision. And at CSU, the two things got collapsed into a single press conference announcement. So there's a detail in the Kinsler piece that makes this more concrete. The tools were rolled out right before finals. Faculty said they had no idea it was coming. The message, as one researcher at San Francisco State put it, was clear without being explicit. Refuse to integrate AI into your courses meant swimming against the current. It's not a pedagogical rollout, that's a mandate, and it sounds like it's a mandate without a plan. And that raises a big question. If the goal was to genuinely support teaching and learning, why not make licenses available at no cost to any student or faculty member who wanted one? Let the early adopters demonstrate value or service problems, or both, before the whole institution commits. That approach is epistemically humble. It says, we don't know yet what this is worth, so let's find out together. The 500,000 license announcement basically says the opposite. It says we already know that knowing happened, but it happened far from the classroom in an executive suite. The internal planning documents obtained by NPR describe the OpenAI partnership as a, quote, huge branding opportunity. I think that pretty much nails it. The contrast I want to draw here is with Nick Janos, a sociology professor at Chico State, who appears in the Kinsler piece. Janos didn't wait for an institutional mandate. After ChatGPT launched in 2022, he started tinkering. He was one of what would have been an early adopter had the university chosen to allow professors to come forward and say they wanted a paid license. He would have been one of the first because he started tinkering over time, carefully, and he built chatbots that embody Karl Marx, Max Weber, Emily Durkheim. His students argue in the chatbots. They submit chat logs. He reduced long writing assignments and replaced them with ones that require students to engage directly with the bots as intellectual interlocutors. These are all series of very explicit, specific pedagogical choices with well-substantiated reasoning behind them. That's what it looks like when someone who's close to students decides what the tool is for. That's the opposite of a press conference. The faculty resistance at CSU, and there's been substantial resistance, is partly explained by institutional factors that don't translate directly to K2. University faculty have academic freedom, protections, and union representation that most K-12 teachers don't have in the same way. They have more standing to push back in this formal way. But there's something else I think that's worth paying attention to is that university students are closer to the job market. They can see the threat to their own labor in a way that, say, a 14-year-old probably can't. Students who came to CSU to become journalists, writers, or fine arts majors are watching those fields shrink in real time. A university-wide survey of 94,000 respondents found that 65% of students were skeptical that AI had benefited education overall. And these are students who use it heavily. 84%, they said that they had used GPT. The skepticism isn't ignorance, it's the proximity to the consequence of that usage. Notably, 80% of those same students said that they wouldn't be comfortable turning in AI-generated work as their own. I don't think that's a failure of the program. I think that's students drawing a meaningful line between using a tool and surrendering authorship, perhaps a positive sign in terms of their own AI literacy. That's actually the distinction that we've been trying to make on this podcast since we started a couple of months ago. So let's talk about what this means for K-12, because I think that's really what we want to get to. For classroom teachers, the pattern at CSU, leadership makes the deal, faculty find out right before finals, figure it out yourselves, is not unique to higher education. When your district enables an AI tool system-wide, the question worth asking is whether anyone who actually understands what happens in your classroom was in the room when that decision was made. The answer is no, something's already gone wrong, regardless of whether the tool is any good. I will say that at the K-12 level, I see this happening less frequently than at the university level. For instructional coaches, when a new AI tool arrives in your district, your job is to be the person asking what the pedagogical purpose is before anyone opens an account. The Janus example is useful not as a model to copy, but as a standard to apply. He could explain exactly why every choice he made with the tool served a learning goal. I think that's the question to put in front of teachers. What is this for in your classroom with your students? If you don't have a clear answer to that, then the tool isn't ready. For district leaders, when you sign an enterprise AI agreement, you're making a statement about what you think school is for. The statement CSU made was about workforce preparation and institutional prestige. I'm not sure that framing is inherently wrong, but when it's the only frame and when teachers weren't part of the conversation, then the tool arrives without a purpose owned by anyone in the classroom. There's a question that Nick Janos asks out loud in the Kinsler piece. That is, what is it that we need to hold on to? That's not a question being asked at a press conference. It's a question being asked by the people who are actually doing the teaching. And it's better to ask yourself that question before someone else brings it to you. So really, the CSU story isn't about OpenAI. I think it's about the distance between the person who decides what AI is for and the people who have to make that decision real every day in classroom teaching. That distance between a chancellor announcing 500,000 licenses and a sociology professor quietly building chatbots that make his students argue with Karl Marx, that's where I think the argument really lives. Providing access isn't the same thing as having a purpose, and when the purpose gets decided by someone who sees the job primarily through a CEO lens, teachers and students tend to find out about it right before finals, as they did in this case. Have you been in this position? I'd love to know your thoughts, your perspective. If you've read this article, what did you think of this decision, what I would call a top-down decision? How are decisions like this playing out in your district? Are they coming top-down, bottom-up? What kind of participation is there from the pedagogical perspective of classroom teachers in decisions to award licenses to much larger groups of people? And how do you understand the logic behind those decisions? As always, thanks for joining and look forward to seeing you next episode.